presently are unprepared to accept could possibly have existed 10,000 years ago. And therefore, proof that these structures are man-made, and indeed, if we can get to it, that they may be 10,000 years old, is by definition going to force a revision of history.
The common knowledge is that the southwestern islands have no history of old civilizations. So if a 10,000-year-old civilization existed, it would be a big surprise. It would be unbelievable.
According to experts, around 8,000 BC, we were primarily hunter-gatherers, nomadic, unorganized clans who had only the most rudimentary stone tools. Certainly not the kind of society capable of creating the Yonaguni Monument.
The general scenario for the rise of what we would call civilization or sophisticated civilization is that it begins in Mesopotamia and Egypt around 3000 BC.
John Anthony West has written a number of books about the monuments of early humans. And West, like Hancock, believes that there is ample evidence throughout the Earth that a sophisticated Ice Age civilization could have existed, a civilization described for millennia in the oral histories of many cultures.
It's very important to remember that there are large numbers of ancient traditions that refer to a lost civilization destroyed by a flood.
But until the discovery of the Yonaguni Monument, tangible evidence to support these ancient myths was lacking.
There was no known evidence of megalithic structures, monumental building, even, say, in the 3000 BC range. And if this was going back to maybe 6,000 or 8,000 BC, that was even more stupendous.
When we continue, mysterious pyramids, temples, and shrines around the world with eerie similarities to Japan's mysterious pyramids.
I think that there's a ton of evidence out there that says that ancient people were in constant contact with each other, much further back than we like to believe.
Over the years, as I've spent more time at Yonaguni, I've become more and more convinced that it is the work of human beings, and that the real mysteries that confront us now are not, was this made by man, but when was it made? Who made it, and what was it made for?
Professor Masaaki Kimura believes that the latest possible date for the creation of the Yonaguni Monument is around 8000 BC, when this part of Japan was still above water. But if this date is correct, and if the monument is man-made, who are the men who built it? For an answer, it is necessary to turn to legend. Around 360 BC, the Greek philosopher Plato writes down for the first time what until then had been only an oral tradition in the West. It is the legend of Atlantis, a civilization of technologically advanced people who flourished around 10,000 BC. But this vision of a great prehistoric society is not Plato's alone. Atlantean-like legends exist on every continent, and in Asia and the South Pacific, there is a rich tradition of ancient texts that all tell a strikingly similar story. It is this shared vision of the distant past that leads some to explore the possibility that such a civilization may have existed in fact as well as fiction.
In my mind, it's quite conceivable that there are some very ancient, relatively sophisticated cultures and civilizations that we've missed up until now that had existed, basically went extinct, if you would, or collapsed before the rise of better-known civilizations about 3500 BC.
Ancient writings from China describe a place called Pengsha, an island to the east inhabited by human beings who could fly and had a potion for eternal life. The inhabitants of Easter Island believe that they are the descendants of a kingdom of gods called Hiva. The oldest of all Hawaiian sacred chants recounts the arrival of a magical race of people from a floating island to the west called Mu.
Yonaguni Monument may be conspicuous evidence signifying that the Mu continent existed.
Yonaguni potentially could tie in with this. In fact, I'm very certain that we should at least look to see if there's something there of sort of a, if you want to call it proto-culture or proto-civilization that we're all descended from.
And whether it is called Mu, Pengjia, or Atlantis, all of these legendary places share one common thread, that the great and ancient civilization of which they speak is destroyed by a terrible flood.
There are more than 600 individual flood myths found all around the world.
We feel that the flood legends and the catastrophe legends, because of their universality, should at the very least be taken seriously and looked into seriously.
And again, physical evidence at Yonaguni fits the legend. If the monument was created above water during the Ice Age, then it is possible that it was destroyed as the Ice Age came to an end.
The ice was stable for more than 100,000 years, and then suddenly, about 17,000 years ago, it all started to melt down. Although the total meltdown took 8,000 years, there were 3 global superfloods during this 8,000-year period, so people living on coastlines would have been taken by surprise. There was one occasion when the sea level rose almost 100 feet, literally overnight in geological terms.
But, again according to legend, while a cataclysmic flood submerges an island nation, there are survivors. And these are the people cast adrift by the tides of change, who spread their legend and share the knowledge of their civilization around the world.
Even more important, you might say, than the physical evidence and the legendary and mythological evidence is the evidence for that shared knowledge. The universality of pyramids and the universality of mathematical and number symbolic systems, to me, is very strong evidence of the universality of some ancient civilization.
Researchers like John Anthony West believe it is no coincidence that when the next great civilizations rise more than 7,000 years later, they build similar structures, even though, for example, the structures in Egypt and Angkor Wat in Cambodia are thousands of miles apart. And many of these edifices bear an uncanny resemblance to the architecture of the Yonaguni Monument. On Okinawa, there is Nagagusuku Castle, a ceremonial building from the 1st millennium BC. On Pohnpei Island in Micronesia, there is a grand expanse of ancient but undated stone ruins known as Nan Modao. And perhaps the most striking of all is the Temple of the Sun near Trujillo, Peru, a pre-Incan building of irregular terraces an ocean away from Yonaguni.
There must have been some kind of transmission of knowledge from generation to generation, which says something, in my opinion, about the level of sophistication and culture of a group that's transmitting knowledge.
In addition to architecture, many of these disparate structures also share a similar function.
It's a simple fact that a great many ancient megalithic structures, whether you're looking at Stonehenge in Britain or the huge megalithic temples of Malta, not only do they consist of large stones that have been cut and worked by human beings, but also they are organized and oriented